Excellent. Anthony Garone, Ellis Fitch, thank you so very much for joining me this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us, Alan.
So first, what I want to do is I want to talk about Edify content, because for anyone who is not familiar with Anthony and Ellis, they recently launched Edify content, and I would love for you guys to tell us what the company does and what you guys are trying to accomplish.
Go for it, Ellis.
Oh, I was going to let you go for it, Anthony.
Well, I guess we're what's called a content marketing agency. And our competitive advantages are we have a great blend between Ellis's background in marketing and my background in software development. So there's not really content agencies where the co-founder has 20 years of technical experience and then moves into writing. Which is great for us because there are so many technical, small, medium, and even large businesses that need someone like us, like an agency where we can help them align their actual messaging with their content goals. We can help them set goals. We can help them write blog posts, newsletters, help them have some sort of cadence of content getting out to the market. In today's market, it's important because, as we saw with the pandemic, when in-person leads go away, you're left with your website. And if your website it looks dead and you have no content, then you're kind of dead in the water for, inbound leads and virtual sales.
Right. Well, congratulations on the launch. And I know you guys, I know several companies and several individuals that already work with Edify. So congratulations on the success that you're already having as well.
Thank you so much.
And I'm a proud customer.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I really appreciate it. We actually put a client list together and there were like 20 clients on there already. And I was like, what? No wonder I'm going crazy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So today we are talking about misconceptions in the job search. And the really cool thing is that you guys have a book coming out about job search misconceptions. So I guess this is our pre-launch party, maybe?
Yeah, you're the first to share anything about it. So thanks for having us.
Right on. Do you guys even have a title, Ellis, for the book yet?
I think we have a few that we're working on. We're going back and forth with our publisher. I'm a very word-focused person, so I have some strong opinions. But, we're looking at something about, winning the job search and how to get hired. But we don't have a specific title agreed on yet.
Gotcha. Well, let us know as soon as you do. And I'd love to have you guys back when we're talking about the book, when I can actually hold it up physically and say, here's the book. We'll have you guys back.
Be later this year.
Right on. Yeah, you're just churning out books like crazy, Anthony.
It's fun to do.
That's awesome. So the ones that we had determined we were going to talk about, we will certainly talk about those three. But I want to encourage people also to post in the comments any that you would like to hear about, any misconceptions that you believe exist or that you believe are misconceptions. Please add it to the comments. We'll put it up there and we'll debate it and have a conversation about it. But the first one, near and dear to my heart, is one, Anthony, that you and I have talked about several times, which is the misconception that the job description was written for me. So tell us why that is a misconception.
Well, I'm sure many of us are familiar with, you come across a job description and it's like, wow, this one speaks to me. And then you apply and you're like, I just feel like this job was made for me. And, you sort of attach this sort of a spiritual destination to it, when in reality, the person who wrote the job description probably just copied and pasted it from a competitor website and then modified it. Or they took some other job description they had internally and just modified it to suit their needs. They certainly weren't thinking of you. Not that that's a bad thing. It's just like, that's the reality of it, just an objective fact. But we often assign like spiritual significance or personal significance to a job application. And that can really create some biases and emotional attachment to the idea of getting a job where you feel destined for it because it was made for you.
Yeah. I think that emotional attachment is the hardest part for people, with that misconception. When you either apply to or walk into an interview and you're like, this is my destiny. You know, this job was so written for me. Like you said, it was copy and pasted, like 98% probably of jobs. And that is absolutely positively not an accurate figure. I have done zero research, but I would have to imagine it's a pretty close number of jobs that are just copied and pasted. So that job was clearly not written for you. Don't have that religious belief, like you said, or emotional attachment to it. Ellis, have you seen that in your own?
I would say that I have been guilty of that emotional attachment. It's really hard when you read a job description, you think, oh, I can do all these things. I want to do all these things, and I am 100% qualified. And you really, I mean, the job search is already an emotional roller coaster. And when you attach more of that significance to it, it really can bring you down to some low lows. And I think having been through it enough times, you really have to learn to practice just not getting attached to that, because oftentimes the things that are most surprising are what will actually work out.
Yeah.
In our book, we sort of we have like the misconception, and then we have what to do about the misconception. And for this one, the solution, the what to do, is to sort of turn that around. Instead of I need this job, you tell the hiring manager, you need me in this job. And it's a very different story to tell. Don't tell the hiring manager, I feel like I was made to do this job. Because then there's like this sort of awkward, well, what if I don't hire you? I actually don't like you. I don't think that you're the right fit. You know, like there's this whole sort of weird, awkward dance that they might have to go through when you start saying those kinds of things. However, if you say something like, I feel like my experience is a perfect fit for this role, and here's why. I'm going to tell you why I am the best fit for your problem. Really, a manager or a job description is seeking out a type of person who can resolve problems that the company is having. That's why they need that role. They don't need you. You know, it's not like the company was made and there was some sort of like plan from above about you being at the company at that time. You know, that's not why the company was founded. But you being available at the right time for that job is a significant thing. And if you feel like you are the answer to their problem, then sell them on you being the answer, not I need this job. You don't even know how much this job would mean to me if I got it.
Yeah, that can definitely be awkward.
It should definitely not be you focused. And at the same time, you want to make sure that you're marketing yourself. And when some of the most effective marketing is done when you're marketing to pain points. So if I know that, you know, you are really lacking in something that I can provide, you talk about how you can fix those problems. Right. And so it's not all about you and I want, but actually I see what you need. Here are some of the things I've done in the past that can fix it.
Right. So you said something, Anthony, in your response that Ellis did not say, and I want to hit on that real quick because I'm curious from your perspective as a hiring manager if this is another misconception. Have you ever hired a, quote, perfect fit? Has anyone ever walked in and been precisely what you've needed for that job?
I mean, yes and no. Yes, in the short term, like I absolutely need this kind of work done. And then you bring that person in and yeah, they're a great cultural fit. They know how to do the work. You basically only have to train them to understand the systems that they need to use in order to do the work. But that only lasts so long because it might be 6 months, it might be a year, it could be even 2 years. It could be the entirety of their duration or their stay at the company where it seems like a perfect fit. But companies change and companies are, aggregations of human beings. So what may seem perfect is really my own perspective as the hiring manager. And often people go into a workplace and they want to make things better in however they see fit for that word better.
Right.
So their idea for better might be pretty different than my idea for better. And there is this sort of internal competition of the manager's goal is to get the work done within the budget, time, and scope allocated from the business. But the employee's goal is to complete the work, but increase their salary. So that increases the cost, and they want more responsibility. So they want the scope of their role to expand over time. Very rarely does somebody just say, I am here to only do this role exactly as written, and that's what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Right.
It just doesn't happen. So perfect fit, it depends on who you're asking and their perspective. And mine as a hiring manager would be like, yes, this person is doing the work I needed done. Yeah. And they get along with everyone so well, and there's been no problems whatsoever. But is that going to last forever? You don't know who you're going to bring into that team. You don't know if there's going to be a client that causes problems. You just never know. So perfect fit is kind of like a non-existent ideal.
Okay. So, but it leads into the next, what I would consider a misconception, and I want to get your opinion on this, is that you need to sell yourself. Like, do you both believe that a person, like, I'm a sales guy, so I do sell myself, as often as I can. I'm trying to convince people of certain things that I'm capable of that maybe others aren't. What is it when you're interviewing and you're an accountant, or you're, an operations executive, or you're a waiter? Do you need to really sell yourself? Do you need to become something that you aren't in order to land that opportunity, in your opinion?
No, I don't think that selling should be considered becoming something that you're not. I think, and like I said before, I think a lot of it is marketing. And sales and marketing, let's be real, are really intertwined. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, but you need to be you and also be the best version of you and convey that properly. If you can't demonstrate your knowledge, your expertise, even just your commitment or your desire, then, people can't just pick up on it. So you can't go in being kind of just this dull, like, well, I sent in my resume and my cover letter says everything, so this is just a formality. Like, no, people want to interact with you, and they want to hear things that aren't on your resume, learn things that aren't in your cover letter, because those are just so limited.
Right.
I think, yes, you need to sell yourself in a way, but no, you should not become something you are not.
Perfect.
I kind of think of it like a mullet, business up front, party in the back. At some point, someone's going to see the party in the back. You can only stay perfectly aligned so they see the shortcut.
I have one, by the way. I'm rocking a mullet right now.
That's called a skullet, by the way. Anyway, at some point, people are going to see that other part of your personality coming through. And, there is a reality to, you have to be a certain kind of person at work or to get the job or something like that. But you can't really fake someone out. At some point, your real personality is going to come out. No one is built to act as a different kind of person, 40, 50 hours a week, whatever it is they end up working. Method actors, those actors who embody the person that they are supposed to be in the film or in a play, they end up living as that person for months. And then there are plenty of stories of how they kind of went crazy, or they drove other people crazy by being this other person who they were not. And I feel like it's disingenuous for you to, pretend to be someone for the sake of getting a job, and then you show up and you can only be that person for so long. So,
right.
And any good company would rather hire the person as they are than the person that they're faking, to be. So yeah. Authenticity always wins.
Yeah. So Jim made a great point here. He said, you need to show your value, something along the lines of, I can get you on the vendor list at Apple, it could potentially get you an interview, and land you that opportunity with the hiring manager, which is a great point, Jim. I appreciate that. Yeah. I think the other thing that we haven't mentioned yet is really just confidence. I think if you're a waiter or an operations executive or an accountant, walking in with a confidence that is not on the line of ego, which is hard for a lot of people. Confidence can certainly brush that line pretty closely. But walking in with confidence, and like Jim said, and like both of you said, the value proposition and what you can bring that maybe others haven't shown that they can bring are really those areas that fall into the category, I think, for a lot of people of selling yourself. Because I would say in my experience, when you're working with people who are unemployed, their ego is decimated. Their confidence is decimated. They've interviewed for countless number of jobs, been declined by so many people. And now they have to put on this costume, or feel as though they have to put on this costume of, I have to be someone I'm not. But you're someone you're not right now. But you were that person before. You probably were that person when you had a job. So it's not an alter ego. It's just finding that, in yourself and being able to walk in with that confidence that you once had. So I think there's a difference there. Anything else on that particular point before we move on to another one?
I would just say that being able to explain, right, to kind of tell the story about the value you can bring instead of just saying what you can do can really help go that extra mile and get people interested.
What a great transition, Ellis. What a great transition. Because the next misconception is your resume is supposed to tell your story.
Ah, well, there we go.
There you go.
Your resume should be like an outline of your history, or like the table of contents. But really, in my opinion, you should be getting in there and explaining and showing your value and telling stories. And you have a few canned and ready to go so that you're not sitting in an interview saying, let me think, hang on. No one wants to hear that.
Right. No one wants to hear that.
I actually love that idea of your resume as a menu. Maybe we should add that to our book. But the idea should be the resume is a conversation starter. Like, it gets you in the door because the hiring manager or the recruiter, whoever's looking at your application, says, oh, I see this relevant experience. It looks like they solve these kinds of problems. It looks like they have a steady, work history. They're progressing in a reasonable, meaningful way that one would expect for a high performer or whatever I need for this role. When you get to the table for that conversation, the resume is, I've told this to so many candidates, please don't talk through your resume. Tell me the most important stories from your work experience, that are in your resume. Just tell me how you got here. Don't tell me, well, I was at Motorola from 1986 through 1994, and then I don't care. I can read that. You have that opportunity with me as a hiring manager in person for a limited amount of time. Don't spend it regurgitating what I can just see on a piece of paper.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And I think that is a good segue. I don't want to leave that topic just yet, but our next misconception is that hiring managers know how to hire an interview. And a lot of times, I mean, I wouldn't say you're in the minority that you don't want somebody walking you through their resume, but a lot of hiring managers and interviewers that I've worked with do exactly that. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult because, when I'm coaching people, when I'm, giving people advice on how to interview, I do exactly what you just said, Ellis, where I'm like, have 3, 4, 5 stories at the ready that will fit. Like, they'll fit any single question that you get because you can morph those stories. If you get a question about conflict with a team member, I guarantee you can pull something from one of those stories. Or if you get a question about, how did you improve processes, you can pull something from one of those stories. But all you're prepared to do is say, I worked at Motorola from 1986 to 1992. You're not going to be prepared for those kinds of questions.
And I think that just because someone asks you to walk them through your resume doesn't mean that you have to. Like, you can go off script. You can creatively walk through your resume by telling stories in some form of chronological order that corresponds to your resume. You don't have to just be a robot.
Yeah.
The goal is not to answer the questions. The goal is to convince the hiring manager that you are the candidate they need. So it doesn't matter what the questions are. Your job doesn't change. You still need to convince the hiring manager that you are the best person to hire. Stories are the way to get humans to change their mind about something. So there might be some confidence in you, like as a candidate, when you walk in, well, this guy had a really good resume, or I read her cover letter, it was really convincing, But when you are there, stories are the way to do it, not regurgitating what's on paper. You can regurgitate it in a story format, like, well, I started here, and tell a version that may walk through your resume, but it's a story, okay? And now I am here, and the logical conclusion, the ending to this story is me working for you. It is not like, well, and now I'm here and I'm still looking for jobs. Yeah, I've got an interview tomorrow, That's not the ending. You need to sell them on the ending. You need to get them to make the conclusion that you are bringing them to, which is you had this job doing this job doing this, you solve these problems, you have confidence in these areas, which leads you to here and now, and this is the job for which I am the best fit.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. I think it's so often missed by people when they're interviewing to have those stories prepared. I don't know how many people I've interviewed where, what is one thing from your last company that you really want to hang your hat on, or one thing that you did that left them in better shape than when you first got there.
Yeah,
and it boggles my mind that's still people have to say, you know what, I really have to think about that. I've never been asked that question before.
Yeah, I mean, what is confidence but the ability to share a story where you solved a similar problem? If somebody said, hey, can you fix this boat engine? You'd be like, well, I have worked on a bunch of cars. I did fix my dad's, Chevy, and I had a Cadillac as my first car, which was a piece of junk. And, you can tell these kinds of stories and be like, yeah, I think I have good reason to believe that I could fix the boat engine. That's confidence. It's not bragging to say that I did all of these things. It's bragging when you say I did all of these things. Now you need to believe that I'm great. Confidence is, let me tell you why I think I can do this based on my history and based on my understanding of the context. So it's a pretty different situation, I think.
For sure.
I think go ahead, Ellis.
I was going to say that Anthony is the one who always pushes me to brag, right, in the right way. And that when you're in a job interview, you really have to kind of get over that mental hurdle of, well, I don't want to speak too highly of myself. I need to be self-effacing or like especially humble. And I think it's a really an important balance to strike of, yeah, you don't want to come off as arrogant because that rubs people the wrong way, but you really need to go out of your way to make your accomplishments clear.
Right.
I love in The Office, Robert California, the character who he ends up being the boss for The
James
Office.
Spader.
Yeah,
the Lizard King.
Yeah, that he's a weird dude. But in his interview, Jim and Gabe and maybe Andy, they're like, hey, we're looking at your resume and you look pretty overqualified. You're a CEO here and CEO there, and this is just a small paper company. And he goes, do I look like someone who would waste his own time? And then he just kind of turns it around and changes the tone of the interview. I think that's such a classic scene because he teaches the interviewers that he is the right person. He's not signing up for something he doesn't know about. He knows it's an easy job for him. This is what he wants. He's here to get it. And I think that's such an amazing, funny, and simple example of what we can do at an interview to show people that we are the right fit for the job.
Yeah. All right. We've got another comment from Jim before we move on to the next topic. To the point of story, a story out of any context is just a story. If the candidate asks a hiring manager what keeps you up at night, you can craft your story to solve that problem. So very true. Yep. Yeah. And I think that, back to the point that we were making earlier, Jim, I think having the stories in mind, which I think all of us agree, you have to have your stories locked in your mind as you walk into any interview and not be thrown off by, I wasn't expecting that question, or I'm not prepared for that question. Preparedness brings confidence. So be prepared with some stories. So back to hiring managers know how to hire and interview. Another big misconception. Anthony, you've hired people. Ellis, you've hired people. I've hired people. I feel fairly confident in my ability to interview people. I feel fairly confident in my ability to vet and disqualify or qualify people. But I don't necessarily have the same level of confidence in the people that I send resumes to. What about you guys?
I'm going to let Anthony start with this one. He's hired far more people than I have.
Well, I think it's a classic management problem. For example, when you get really good at being an individual contributor, somebody says, wow, you're so good at this, you should run the team. As though those are the same skills. You know, I'm so good at sweeping floors, I should manage the team that sweeps floors. But sweeping floors and managing the team are two entirely different skills. And unless a hiring manager recognizes that hiring is a discipline unto itself, then that hiring manager is probably going to have what's known as unconscious incompetence. They're not even aware that they are incompetent. What you want to get to is a state of conscious competence. And that takes an actual awareness that there are skills to develop to hire someone, to interview them, to review their resume. So it is a skill set that gets developed over time. But I know a lot of hiring managers who just go in and they're like, yeah, these are the standard questions I ask. I went on Google and I found the top 10 interview questions. You know, I liked what he said. I liked how she looked. You know, these are not reasons to hire someone.
Right. Right.
No, I agree with that. Ideally, you know, the hiring manager goes in prepared instead of just kind of like, oh, I'm in between meetings, I have to do this really quickly. You know, I think that also makes it hard as a candidate, but something else that makes it hard as a hiring manager is a candidate who doesn't know how to kind of direct the conversation in the way that they want. So I think it's really kind of it's a two-sided dance. But yeah, you definitely can't bank on the hiring manager knowing anything about you or knowing anything about hiring.
Well, and I think it also gets back to one of the things that I know Edify Content does, which is help with job descriptions. I mean, you know, we could just as well have the misconception of hiring managers. We just said hiring managers know how to hire and interview, but do hiring managers even know how to write a job description for the role that they're trying to fill?
In my past jobs, I have written job descriptions.
Quite a few managers that didn't know how to write. And when I told them, you need to just go back and look at how a paragraph is structured, it was like an eye opener for them. Like, oh, topic sentence. Oh, supporting points. Oh, a transition to the next paragraph. Holy cow. Why didn't they teach me this in school? You know, and you can't write a good job description without understanding that you are selling a position to candidates. You know, it's a two-way street, just like a relationship. You know, if you were on a dating app or something, it's not like the other person is perfect and you're walking up hoping, you know, that you're good enough to date them. You have to figure out, is this going to work? And the job description almost never accurately describes a position. How many times do we hear people say, well, I'm doing this, but it was never in my job description. You know, it's just something I have to get done. That happens all the time because job descriptions are inaccurate, business problems change, and roles evolve over time. And they evolve with the person who's filling the role, and the entire team can influence what a role ends up doing. So it's a big question. It's a big misconception that a job description is actually describing the job you would get when you get
so true. So true. Yeah, it's amazing to me. I mean, you know, as you talk through the job description and the role and the responsibilities and all of those things, how different those are. And really then having a conversation regarding who is currently in that job, because can I talk to that person? Because that person knows what it takes day in and day out to do this job that you're trying to fill. That to me is another big miss. You know, hiring managers can easily walk over to that person and say, okay, what is it that you do? Because we need another you. Yet that seems to not be the case.
And I think that often job descriptions misrepresent the company culture. I mean, basically, basically every job description that you see says, oh, you need to work in like a fast-paced, quick-changing environment. And then you show up for an interview and it's just like this sleepy, fluorescently lit, like gray den.
That's because they copied it from their competitor or someone else, or they wanted to sound a certain way in the description.
Right. Or they think that the kind of person they want is this like kind of dynamic wearer of every hat. And so I think that's also something to keep in mind. Going back to the first misconception we discussed of, you know, Oh, and of course, my mind totally blanked on what is it the job is meant for you.
Yeah.
Well, if you're basing that off of a job description, the job description is probably not accurate. So it's just another way you can detach yourself from it.
Yep. I'm gonna put Jim's comment up here real quick. Job descriptions are written to prevent a lawsuit, not describe what success looks like in a job. So
I'm a cynic.
yeah, I'm gonna slightly disagree with that. I don't think that's the case. I think often we think that. I also think we often think that we don't get feedback because we're trying to prevent a lawsuit. And I think, sometimes that's the case. I don't think it's always the case. So I would just say that. But I want to hit Stephen's point here real quick, because we're talking a lot about being prepared as a candidate. And I would say this is definitely a huge pet peeve of every candidate. When they walk in and the hiring manager says, I haven't had time to look at your resume yet, so tell me about yourself.
I feel like that is an awesome opportunity. Oh my goodness. Like, okay, so I can basically sell you on myself live in person, and you have no context. I think it's a huge opportunity. Yeah, I could see why it's annoying, but if I were to say that, I'd be basically saying, okay, I just met you. I don't know anything about you, but you have a fresh, clean slate to convince me that you're the best person. You're here in person with me. Someone got you here. So let's talk.
Yeah.
Oh, Anthony,
yeah, it's a tough one.
Out with a good attitude.
No, seriously, like I'm grateful for when I've had that experience. Like, oh, you don't know anything about me? Cool. Now I can actually present myself, who I am, not this phony paper version of me. I hate my resume. I hate my cover letter. I don't want you to read it. I just want to meet you. I can get a job if I meet a person. I can't get a job if they have to read about me.
No, that's a great point.
You're also very prepared.
It's a great point. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's a good way to look at it, Stephen. But I've heard that pet peeve many, many times. That you're not alone. Definitely not alone. Especially when I tell people to over prepare. Have so many things ready, and then they walk in and the interviewer is not in any way, shape, or form prepared.
But it's also a red flag
about the company.
Yeah,
for sure. For sure.
Why didn't you read about me before meeting me for this $100,000 commitment you're going to make every year?
or they don't even know, so what is the role that you applied to? I mean, I've had that happen too, where they who work for the company right now don't even know that they're hiring for that specific job. It's crazy.
Well, and oftentimes as an interviewee and being interviewed for a marketing position, a lot of times when I have met higher level executives, they frankly don't even understand why they should be hiring for my position. So what do you do? Why do we need it?
That's always comfortable, right?
Well, like Anthony said, it's a great opportunity to show why you think and why you know that your role is valuable and why you are valuable and what you can bring to that. And I would say most of the time I've been able to kind of bring people around, but that's another reason to be prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, it can get really awkward when you say, what was your name again? Oh, I think I'm here to replace you. Oops.
Oops.
I don't know who sent you in, but they might have made a mistake. And then Ken, our good friend Ken Kaufman, I wonder how I ever got any job ever without my network of supporters. I'd be living a single wide with $3 to live on until the end of the month.
Well, Ken is very smart. Ken may have unconscious competence, which is a real thing. I don't even realize how good or smart I am. However, I think anyone who is an intelligent storyteller like Ken is, he's an author and our book publisher, and he sells stories. He sells books. That's what he does. So I think if you have the ability to talk to someone and you recognize this is hard. Getting a job is hard. I don't know how I would have gotten a job, if I didn't know this stuff. Chances are you knew it. You just had unconscious competence.
Yeah. I like it. All right. So I think the last one, unless anyone has any others that they want to share, is we did not cover this one. My resume and body of work should speak for itself. We have not talked about that one fully yet. but I would love to. I'd love to talk about that one, Anthony. You and I had a conversation about that just the other day, where people, submit one resume and say, "Done." What more could you possibly ask? Why is that a misconception?
Ellis, do you want to cover this one? I've done a lot of talking.
Well, I think that this kind of ties into all of the things that we've been talking about. No, a resume shouldn't speak for yourself. You should speak for yourself. You should be prepared with all the stories to explain, because again, a resume is just a menu. And obviously you want to whet people's appetites, right? You want them to read this resume and say, oh, this person might be good. Let's talk to them. But that doesn't mean like, oh, hired. No, your resume is just a way to get in the door, to sell yourself.
Right. That is perfectly said. Anthony, anything to add to that?
If Anthony is speechless, then we're just...
Yeah, I know. I don't know what to do. I'm really at a loss.
I think it largely comes down to, if you know anything about the type of person that is going to hire you, then your resume should speak to that person, whether it's to the company or that individual or the type of person, a persona that would hire for this position. I mean, you can't be totally clueless, because if you have enough experience in the industry, you wouldn't be applying for a job that's completely out of your knowledge domain. So chances are you have worked with other managers, even if it's just one. I'm going to write this resume like I'm speaking to my current manager, and you hope that the next hiring manager has some amount of overlap with your current manager. And that's like in a completely uninformed junior context where you haven't had a lot of jobs. But if you have had a lot of jobs, then don't write your resume in a vacuum thinking, okay, well, I did this, I did that, I did this. Your resume is supposed to tell a story to the type of person or the actual individual that will be hiring you. So you see this in marketing all the time. Who is our target audience? Who are we really trying to convince to buy this?
What do they care about?
Exactly. What do they care about? What are their pain points? The pain points are in the job description. You have all this information. Use it. Tell a story. Convince the hiring manager in the way that you think they would best receive the message, that you are the person to solve for the pain points.
Yep.
Ellis, you want to add any content or
I
marketing
do.
angles?
I also want to say that if you really feel like you don't know what the hiring manager is looking for, you really don't know their pain points, you need to do some research. You need to look in depth at their website, especially for pages that might pertain to a specific role you're applying for. You need to search for them in Google and see what news has come up about them. You need to look through Glassdoor reviews. You need to do research, because that will show a lot of the pain points, and then you start writing to that. And the benefit of getting research from multiple sources is that you don't just take one as the source of truth and then incorrectly, target your pain points.
Right. So you need to prepare.
Yeah, I think that's what most of this boils down to.
It really does. It really does. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about misconceptions, but I think being prepared will alleviate a lot of issues for anyone going through the search. Without a doubt.
You are absolutely allowed to ask at the beginning of the interview, like after they say, okay, let's do introductions, you can say, hey, before we start, I would just like to ask, what are the pain points you guys are experiencing? Why are you hiring for this role? And then you can speak directly to it throughout the interview. Instead of just guess and hope that they share something in a question, you can say, hey, I'm interested. Why are you hiring? What is going on here? And they can say, well, we're short staffed, or the last person who left, they were running this shift, or they had expertise in this technology. We need someone to help catch up. You can align all the stories you tell in your interview with those pain points, and you get the information up front. There is nothing illegal or wrong or unethical or embarrassing or there's nothing negative about saying, tell me about this job. Tell me why you're hiring before you start the interview. It's a two-way engagement. You are not the only person being interviewed. You are there to also interview the people with whom you'd be working.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And I've told people too, when you sit down for an interview, describe to them what you understand the job to be. So Anthony, I appreciate you taking the time today. I understand you're looking for a .NET developer with, C# and .NET Core, somebody with 8 years of experience. Is that a basic understanding of the role? And if you start by asking the first question, first of all, I think that takes air out of the balloon, calms people down. Yes, we're in the right room. I'm not in earth science when I should be in algebra, which I had happen to me in college one time. So I know what that feels like, and it's uncomfortable. But yeah, I mean, it's just, to your point, asking the first question and making sure you're on the same page is a good way to start an interview.
Get the answers up front.
Yeah.
It's not cheating. It's an advantage.
And it shows that you're engaged. And
That's right. Yep.
Questions are the best.
Yeah. Curiosity works. And like Jim said, and to both of your points, what keeps you up at night is a great question. I think the pain points or what keeps you up at night is a great way to phrase it, just to kind of get to the heart of why you are sitting there talking to people about this job. It's a good way to launch. Any others that we did not cover that you guys have in your book that are near and dear to you that you would like to talk about? I mean, there's one other, but it's a very self-serving one, so I don't really want to talk about it.
Well, I guess what I would say is the book, when it comes out, we currently have almost 60 misconceptions that people have about getting a job. And there are plenty more, but we believe that these 55, 60 misconceptions are very important to develop some self-awareness. Candidates need to be self-aware, especially when hiring managers or employers are not. And so you need to be able to navigate these difficult conversations. It's really a game of persuasion and influence and making sure that you are prepared. So I don't know when the book will come out, but later this year. And just the whole purpose of it is to make you think. Even if you think that you understand the misconception, you might not fully understand it, or there might be another angle at which you can apply this to your life. So I think just the idea of being a job candidate and asking yourself, what am I not understanding? Especially if you haven't gotten a job. There are way more jobs, literally millions more jobs than there are people to fill them right now in America. So if you're not getting a job, start looking inward. Don't blame, you're not a victim or anything like that. Don't blame the hiring teams or blame the market. Look at yourself and see, what am I not convincing people of? And Alan, I'll let you close on the feedback topic, because if you don't get a job and if you have a series of interviews that go nowhere, what can you do?
Yeah, I mean, feedback is what we covered in the LinkedIn live session with Christine Rogers last week. And, I can say that I just responded to someone this morning as well who said, I've tried all of the tips, all of the advice that you've given, and I still do not get feedback from people. I would say it's much like my career, which is sales. It's a numbers game. I don't know how many people that person has reached out to. I don't know how many interviews they've had. I don't know the form that they followed. But I can tell you eventually someone will provide you with feedback. It will happen. It's a numbers game. So it's not a end all be all. No one ever is going to provide me with feedback. I provide just about every single person I talk to who I say no to with feedback. So it will happen, but you have to try different methods. You can't always say, I thought I was perfect for this job. What was it about me that you didn't like? That's the wrong approach, in my opinion. I don't think that will ever get you anywhere. I think that will, to the point of a conversation we had earlier, I think that seems litigious. That seems like a bad approach, and one that would make me think that you're cranky and I don't want to respond to you. Whereas if you say, I really appreciate the time you took with me. I appreciate the time that the team took with me and dedicated. I would assume by now you've hired the person that was right for the company. What I would like to know is, what was it about the rest of the pool of candidates that you met with that didn't strike the right chord? And that way you're not highlighting yourself. You're saying all these other people interviewed for the same job. What was it about that one individual that made you select them? That's just a different way of getting feedback that might work. I'm not, again, there's no guarantee that people are going to respond to you, but the goal is to get there. Well, Ellis Fitch, Anthony Garone, Edify Content. How do people reach you? How do people connect with Edify?
You can visit our website at edifycontent.com, or you could just send us an email, hello@edifycontent.com, and we'll go to both of us and we'll get back to you. We want to hear from you.
Right on. I can't thank you guys enough for being here. I really appreciate it. Great conversation. Important topic.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alan.
Thank you, guys.